Have you ever wondered why some people always seem to be one step ahead, even without saying a word? Perhaps you have experienced that frustrating feeling of being stuck, of not being able to understand what is really going on in other people's minds, or worse, of being invisible, unable to influence, win, or come out on top in any situation. This feeling of powerlessness, of always being at the mercy of what others think or do, can erode your confidence and leave you hostage to a game that seems endless. But what if I told you that there is a way to win, to dominate, to manipulate everything around you without ever having to open your mouth? That, in fact, the greatest power lies in your mind, in your ability to understand people, to predict their movements, and to act silently but lethally. It sounds like a magic trick, doesn't it? But it's something that philosophers like Nietzsche understood over a century ago. True power does not lie in strength or speech, but in your invisible strategy, in your emotional intelligence. If you feel like you're always being manipulated, that others control your actions, or that your words have no effect, then this message is for you. Because the secret lies in learning to read beyond words, to use your mind as a powerful weapon, to understand the emotions and intentions of others without saying a word. You can become someone who controls the situation, who can get out of traps, who challenges any opponent with a simple exchange of glances or a meaningful silence. And believe me, this skill is not the exclusive gift of a minority. It can be acquired, trained, mastered. And in this video, we're going to explore exactly how to do that. How to use Nietzsche's philosophy, his radical view of life, to understand others better than they understand themselves. How to become an invisible force, a presence that frightens and inspires at the same time. If this idea made you think, if it touched something inside you, then I invite you to stay with me. Because here on this channel, we talk about what no one else has the courage to discuss, about what really makes a difference in your life. If you want to learn how to get ahead, to master the game of silent manipulation, then subscribe now. Because the power to transform your life is closer than you think. And it all starts with a simple understanding. You can win without saying a word. So, are you ready? You feel a deep fatigue, not just physical, but an emotional exhaustion that consumes your strength, leaving you increasingly vulnerable. And yet, there is a guilt that eats away at you for wanting distance, for wanting to get away from people who seem to demand everything from you, without ever realizing how much it wears you down. You find yourself thinking that you should be strong, that you should endure, even when everything inside you screams for rest, for a break, for a breath. But then comes the anxiety, the constant worry about rejection, about what others will think if you just disappear for a while. This feeling of abandoning yourself becomes a silent battle, a war you fight every day inside your head. You know that this is bad for you, that giving in to these feelings will only deepen your loneliness, but even so, you can't stop. It's as if an invisible force is pulling you into the abyss, making you repeat the same patterns, feeding the feeling that your existence is a never-ending struggle. You realize that by giving of yourself, by giving yourself away, your energy drains away, turning into a feeling of emptiness that only grows. And the more you try to be strong, the more you feel that hole inside you open up. You are trapped in this spiral of self-abandonment, where silence is your only companion, and the weight of this unspoken pain seems to become more unbearable with each passing day. You feel that deep down, this pain is not just about others, but about yourself, about a part of you that is crying out for help, and that, perhaps out of fear or shame, prefers to remain silent. And in the silence of that weary soul, the question remains: how long will you allow this invisible pain to dictate the rhythm of your life while trying to hide the wound that only you can see? Each message seems to pull an invisible string, entangling you even more in the feeling of obligation, of unfulfilled duty, of someone who needs to respond, even when your body and mind are exhausted. You feel an overwhelming urge to turn off your phone, to walk away, but an inner voice tells you that you can't, that if you don't respond, you'll seem indifferent, selfish, or uninterested. So you respond, even though you don't want to, even though your heart is heavy, just to keep the peace, just to avoid the silent conflict that always seems to be lurking. And so, day after day, you accept invitations you don't want, commit to tasks that only drain your energy, only increase your sense of exhaustion. You say yes for fear of rejection, for fear of appearing weak, for fear that if you don't please, you will be abandoned. Every decision seems like a trap, every choice an invisible prison you build without realizing it. You feel increasingly trapped in a routine of self-deception, of pretending that everything is fine, while inside a silent storm is growing. You participate in conversations that seem more like an exchange of negative energy, where your words seem to lose their power. Your voice becomes a faint whisper, almost a scream stuck in your throat. You realize that you are there, present, but at the same time far away, distant from yourself. Each interaction drains you a little more. Each word spoken is a bargaining chip for a little acceptance. And deep down, you feel used, emotionally exploited, as if your soul were an inexhaustible source that others drink from until it runs dry, without caring how worn out you are. In the silence of your mind, a constant battle rages. You want to scream. You want to run away. You want to escape this invisible prison, but the fear of being rejected, of exposing yourself, of showing your inner wounds paralyzes you. You feel overwhelming pressure, as if you were suffocating inside a cage of other people's expectations. It seems that your life has become a series of automatic responses, a routine of pleasing others, of hiding what you really feel, of silencing your deepest emotions because you think that if you open up, you will lose what is most precious to you: external acceptance. And this pain that no one sees, this invisible wound, becomes a constant companion. You carry this silent weight, this guilt of not being enough, this anxiety of not being loved enough. You feel increasingly disconnected from yourself, as if you were living an illusion, wearing a mask that insists on falling, but that you try to hold on to with all your strength. With each passing day, you realize that you are trapped in a spiral of self-deception, of internal suffering, of a loneliness that seems greater than any words can express. There you are in your routine, living a silent war, a battle that no one sees, but that consumes you from within. And yet you continue, as if it were an inevitable routine, a condition that seems impossible to break. You feel that this pain, this anguish, this emotional fatigue is your deepest truth, an invisible prison that imprisons you without anyone noticing. And in the silence of this routine, you wonder if there is a way out, if this pain will ever go away, or if it will become just a part of who you are, hidden behind a forced smile and an "I'm fine" that means nothing. True strength is not in speech, but in the ability to remain silent while mastering the invisible game of the mind. Nietzsche said that those who fight monsters must be careful not to become monsters themselves. This reveals something profound. Often, our greatest battles take place within us, in silence where no one can see. Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you try to explain yourself, your emotions seem to be beyond your control? That your invisible pain is like a shadow that follows you, even when everyone around you seems oblivious? This feeling of being stuck in a silent cycle of suffering is something that many people carry with them, without realizing that there is a philosophy behind it, a strategy of power that can be mastered. Let's talk about the concept of mask or persona. In psychology, this idea explains how we create a facade to hide our true emotions, our deepest vulnerabilities. Imagine that every day you put on a mask, a version of yourself that you believe to be stronger, more controlled, more accepted. This mask is a protection, yes, but it is also a prison, because by hiding your pain and insecurities, you end up feeding a sense of isolation that no one really knows you or understands what you are going through inside. Have you ever found yourself smiling to hide your sadness, pretending to be fine when in fact your heart is heavy? This is the trap of the persona. It helps us survive, get through the days, but it also distances us from our true essence. And it is precisely this distance that feeds the cycle of silent pain, anxiety, and fear of rejection. Do you feel that behind your mask there is a part of you that longs for genuine connection, for the freedom to be who you really are? Or have you convinced yourself that you need to keep up this facade because showing your vulnerability would be surrendering to the enemy? Reflecting on this mask is the first step in understanding why you feel so tired, so exhausted. Perhaps when you look inside, you will realize that your greatest battle is not against the world outside, but against your own need to maintain this facade. And in doing so, you distance yourself from your true strength, which comes from authenticity and self-understanding. Imagine a life where you could finally take off the mask without fear, without waiting for approval. What would it be like to look in the mirror and recognize who is really there? What would it be like to live without the need to hide your deepest pains? This journey of self-discovery and liberation from the role you have been playing is what paves the way for the next step, learning to influence and overcome without saying a word. Because deep down, the greatest power lies in being authentic, invisible to the eyes of others, but irresistible in your essence. So are you ready to discover how to turn that mask into your greatest weapon of influence? And that is exactly why you often find yourself stuck in a cycle of automatic responses, of reactions that seem inevitable but are actually reflections of an internal battle that you don't always understand. You may have noticed that in conflict situations, you tend to back down to avoid direct confrontation. You may not have realized it, but this reaction is a way of protecting your vulnerability, a mask you wear to hide your fear of rejection or losing control. And so you respond with silence, with indifference, because you believe this is the best way to avoid being hurt. In your daily life, this attitude manifests itself when you agree with opinions you don't believe in, just to keep the peace, or when you avoid expressing your true emotions for fear of appearing weak, and in doing so, you reinforce an invisible cycle of self-deception, of disconnection from yourself. Another common situation is the difficulty of setting clear boundaries with toxic people around you. You may not have noticed, but your silence is often an unconscious strategy to avoid conflict, to avoid confronting what hurts you. You prefer to accept humiliation or subtle abuse rather than assert yourself. And in this behavior lies a demonstration of how your will to power has been replaced by a need for approval, fueled by fear of rejection. Thus, your passivity becomes a form of control, a way to maintain the appearance of peace, even if internally you feel consumed by resentment or frustration. And all this happens because you are stuck in an old pattern, a mental programming that has been built up over the years, a narrative that silence and submission are ways to maintain security. But this is an illusion, because in reality, what you are doing is perpetuating a feeling of powerlessness, that your true strength is hidden, not in your words, but in your ability to remain silent, to not show your vulnerabilities. You are not weak, you are just stuck in a routine of automatic behaviors, an unconscious trap that reinforces your fear of being seen, of being rejected, of losing control. And it is precisely there, in that recognition, that your liberation begins. Because when you understand that this attitude is not a weakness, but a response to an old pattern, you open space for real change, a change that starts from within, in your silent consciousness, in your ability to master your mind and emotions without saying a word. And so you prepare yourself for a new phase where your true strength manifests itself in authenticity, in the invisible influence that comes from self-mastery. And that is the essence that will take you to a new level of power without saying a word. Do you feel that by hiding your true emotions, you are moving further and further away from who you really are? And the most painful thing is that by doing so, you end up feeding a deep sense of loneliness, even when surrounded by people. Because deep down, the mask not only hides your vulnerabilities, but also steals your authenticity, your silent power of influence. Have you ever wondered why, even when you want to truly connect, it seems like something invisible is preventing you from opening up? Perhaps it is the fear of rejection, the insecurity of showing your true self, or the desire to maintain the appearance of control. These emotions, which seem small, actually create a silent prison where power is maintained not by force, but by submission to your own mask. Thus you react to situations with indifference, silence, or conformity, believing that this is how you are protecting yourself. But in reality, you are moving away from your true potential, feeding the cycle of self-deception that reinforces your disconnection. And here is the truth that many avoid confronting. This posture of silence and submission is not a weakness, but a protective strategy from an old pattern. It is a learned response, a programming that insists on keeping you in the comfort zone of silent control. But what happens when you begin to realize that this strategy, while seemingly safe, actually imprisons you? When you understand that true strength does not lie in resistance or in a mask, but in the courage to remain authentic, even without words. This understanding is the first step toward a profound transformation, where silence ceases to be a prison and becomes a powerful weapon of invisible influence. True strength lies in mastering your mind and emotions in stillness, in the certainty of who you are, even when no one else recognizes you. It is in silent authenticity that you find the power to influence and transform your reality. Your mask, which once seemed like protection, can become your greatest weapon of freedom. But this change only happens when you recognize the value of inner silence, authentic presence, and the invisible control you have over yourself. So the question remains, how long will you continue to live like this, hiding your essence and feeding this cycle of self-deception? Now, the question is, how much longer will you allow your mask to dictate the rhythm of your life? How far will you stray from your true power, believing that silence is your only defense? Think about it. And if any part of this reflection touched you in any way, write it here in the comments. I want to know how many people are going through the same silence as you, wanting to break free, but not knowing where to start. You know that if you don't respond, you may seem indifferent, uninterested, or even unfair, and this feeling of silent judgment haunts you early in the day. So you send a quick reply, trying to sound cordial, but deep down, you feel a twinge of anxiety, a fear of losing that connection, of being forgotten or rejected. Throughout the day, this dynamic repeats itself. You participate in group messages, respond to comments on social media out of a sheer need for approval, even when your heart isn't in it. Every message you receive, every notification, becomes a responsibility that seems to accumulate inside you. Like a snowball that keeps growing, you feel trapped in this routine of automatic responses, of interactions that seem empty, but that you can't avoid. The feeling that you need to be always available, always present, so as not to let anyone down, weighs like an invisible burden on your chest. You ask yourself, why am I doing this? For whom, anyway? To please others, to avoid failure, to hide my own insecurities. Sometimes you spend hours with your phone in your hand, checking for new messages, anxious to see what others think of you, even without knowing for sure what you really want to communicate. You respond to an invitation or a request for help, even when you don't want to, just to keep the peace, to appear kind, to avoid conflict. And when silence sets in, You feel a pang of guilt, a sense that you could have done more, that you should always be available, always attentive. This routine of responding out of obligation, of staying online to please others, of feeling anxious about accumulated messages, all feeds a sense of emptiness, of disconnection, of a life that seems increasingly automatic and meaningless. And deep down, you know that this mask of constant availability is robbing you of your authenticity, distancing you from what really matters, leaving a growing hole inside you. Maintaining a toxic or one-sided relationship often seems like an inevitable routine, an invisible prison you can't escape. You find yourself stuck in forced conversations where every word seems too heavy, loaded with expectations that aren't yours. You say yes, even when your heart wants to scream no, because the fear of losing what you think is your only source of hope or security holds you back. You do favors against your will just to keep the peace, to avoid conflict or the feeling of rejection that seems so close, so threatening. And sometimes you just stay. You stay because the fear of loneliness hurts more than any confrontation, more than the emptiness of being alone with your thoughts. In this routine, you become a silent spectator of your own life, putting aside your needs, your deepest desires. You feel emotionally used, like a disposable piece, a bargaining chip in a game that was never yours. This need for approval, to be loved, makes you forget who you really are. You gradually abandon yourself, giving away your energy, your essence, to those who don't value or truly care about you. This is a form of self-annihilation, an emotional neglect that becomes part of your daily life. You trade your well-being for an illusion of security, for an empty hope that someday everything will change. And even though you know that these relationships drain you, that they make you feel more empty than happy, you stay. You stay because the fear of being alone is greater than the pain of being with someone who doesn't value you. You cling to the idea that, perhaps with effort, things can get better, that your presence or absence can change the other person. But the truth is that you are feeding a destructive cycle, a self-deception that keeps you trapped in a routine of emotional neglect. You forget yourself, your needs, your happiness, while you devote yourself to maintaining the illusion that everything is fine. And in the end, who really takes care of you? Who protects you from yourself? But you often ignore these signs, living in an exhausting routine where silence and repression have become your greatest armor. Insomnia, for example, is not just a difficulty sleeping, but a clear manifestation of a restless mind, of unresolved emotions that insist on tormenting you in the dead of night. You find yourself tossing and turning in bed, trying to turn off your thoughts, but they seem to multiply, leaving you increasingly tired and vulnerable. This extreme fatigue, which seems to never go away, is a reflection of a body that is crying out for help, that is carrying an emotional load that it has not been able to unload during the day. Every time you ignore these signs, your body sends you a message. Stop, listen, set boundaries. But you continue to push these signs down, trying to stay strong, trying to appear that everything is under control. Constant irritation, that feeling of being on the verge of a nervous breakdown, is a warning that your emotions are gathering dust, that your emotional boundaries are being crossed. You feel irritated with colleagues, family members, even yourself, without understanding exactly why. This irritation is a time bomb that indicates that your emotions are wearing thin, that your emotional health is on the verge of collapse. Anxiety attacks, often sudden, are not random, but a response from the body to the accumulation of stress, fear, and insecurity. They appear like a storm that takes you by surprise, leaving you breathless, with your heart racing as if you were about to lose control. All of this is a clear sign. Your body is begging for boundaries, for space to breathe, for a break to process repressed emotions. Ignoring these signs is like trying to silence an emergency siren that insists on ringing. Your body is telling you that it's time to stop, listen, and set boundaries. Because if you continue to silence your emotions and ignore these signs, your body will scream even louder. And when that happens, you may no longer be able to hear it. Your physical and emotional health depends on you realizing that your body is asking for help, that it needs boundaries to survive. And remember, your endurance has a limit, and silence is not a cure. Your body is screaming, but you keep silencing it. You feel like a faucet that's been left running, a source of energy that can never be turned off. Every day, you give a little more of yourself, believing that this will prevent conflict or keep the peace. But in reality, you are feeding an endless cycle, a wheel of pain that only grows stronger with every effort to please. The more you give, the more they demand. It's like a child who never tires of asking, and you, tired, always respond, even if the weight of it begins to crush your shoulders. You become an overflowing vessel, a fountain that never runs dry, always leaking, always giving more than you can bear. And so, day after day, this emotional exhaustion deepens, accumulates, becomes a mountain of fatigue that seems impossible to climb. You begin to feel a silent pain, a feeling of being trapped in an invisible prison where the chains are made of other people's expectations. You become a wax statue, always available, always welcoming the tears, the frustrations, the demands that seem to never cease. And the more you give, the more they want. You become an inexhaustible source of patience, understanding, sacrifice, even when your body cries out for rest. And the worst part is that by giving in, you reinforce the idea that this is your only option. You become a puppet, manipulated by an invisible force that feeds your own demand for resistance, for silence. The cycle repeats itself month after month, like a clock that never stops. You wake up hoping that everything will be different, but the routine of giving in and enduring repeats itself, like a tragedy that never ends. Your energy is depleted, your soul grows heavier, and you begin to realize that your happiness is slipping away, like sand sliding through your fingers. Your days become a series of small emotional deaths. The insomnia that won't let you rest, the irritation that explodes over anything, the constant feeling of being on the verge of collapse. You feel like someone who is drowning in a sea of emotions, struggling to breathe, but unable to surface. How long will you allow this cycle to destroy you day after day? The more you insist on holding on to this pain, the more it becomes your constant companion. You wonder if there is a way out. But deep down, you know that the real enemy is this repeating cycle that traps you in an invisible web of sacrifice and exhaustion. And the answer remains hidden, while your hope fades away in the routine that slowly consumes you, without mercy. If this video touched your heart, if it made you reflect on your own masks and the strength you have within you to change, leave a like right now. Your gesture helps spread this message of hope, that change is possible for those who have the courage to see beyond the surface. Each like is a spark of resistance against the silence that imprisons us, proof that you are searching for something deeper, more true. You are not alone on this journey of self-discovery and liberation. Through these words, I want you to feel that there is an invisible force ready to awaken your inner power, ready to transform your masks into weapons of silent influence. Remember how much you've already faced: the silent pain, the emotional exhaustion, the cycle of self-deception that traps you in a routine of disconnection. You feel the weight of a mask that protects you, but also isolates you. You recognize the signs your body is sending you: insomnia, fatigue, irritation, anxiety. These are cries for change, for boundaries, and for authenticity. You are not condemned to live in this invisible prison of sacrifice and resistance. The truth is that within you there is immense potential, a force that can transform silence into a powerful weapon of true influence. Now that you understand what lies behind this behavior, you can begin to free yourself. You can use this mask as a tool for self-knowledge, genuine connection, and silent strength. The time is now. You have the power to change your story. Just take the next step. Believe in your ability to rewrite your destiny. Your journey to a fuller, freer, and more impactful life begins right now. Trust that your greatest power lies within you, hidden amid the silence. You have the courage to look within, recognize your vulnerabilities, and understand that even in pain and silence, there is a hidden strength waiting to be unleashed. Now, know that change is possible. Even if the path seems difficult, believe that every small victory, every obstacle overcome, is a seed of a new you. You are not your fear, your anxiety, or the mask you wear to protect yourself. You are the person who decides to free yourself from these chains, who decides to rewrite your story with courage and hope. The journey of transformation requires effort, yes, but it begins with the decision to want something better, more authentic, more free. And that moment of reflection, of searching for authenticity, is the first real step. You have already taken that step by watching this far, and that is a victory. Every tear, every reflection, every desire to move forward strengthens your ability to resist and reinvent yourself. Remember, you are not your pain, your flaws, or your mistakes. You are the one who finds strength in silence, calm in chaos, and power in vulnerability. The most important thing is to believe that it is possible, that your life can be lighter, more authentic, more impactful. And believe that your transformation begins now, at this very moment. Starting today, you can choose to free yourself from the invisible chains that bind you. The first big change is deciding that you deserve a fuller, more authentic life. So lift your head up, take a deep breath, and know this. Your new path begins with the decision that you deserve a better life. What's the next step? Stay with me, because together we will transform silence into a weapon of influence and inner strength. Today, you not only heard about the silent power of mastering your mind, but you began to understand that true strength lies in your choice to act. You reflected on the mask you wear, on the cycle of self-deception that keeps you trapped, and you realized that transformation begins within you. The path to a more authentic and impactful life is within your reach, and the decision to walk it is entirely up to you. You can continue in the same routine of silence and fear, or you can make room for courage, authenticity, and the invisible power that resides in your essence. What you do now will determine your tomorrow. Remember that change is not a coincidence, but a conscious choice you make every day. Your strength lies in your decision to break patterns, to use silence as a weapon of influence, and to rewrite your story with authenticity. If this message touched your heart, subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications to receive more content that will fuel your transformation. And watch the next video I'm leaving on the screen, because that's the next step in your journey of self-discovery and liberation. After all, your true strength comes from conscious silence, from recognizing the mask and the control you have over your life. Now, the choice is yours. Do you want to stay in the routine that holds you back, or do you want to take the next step toward emotional freedom? The decision is yours, and it can transform everything. See you in the next video, because your transformation is just beginning.